Hey folks, welcome back. So some of you will remember the video I did a while back about how to start playing Star Trek Adventures from Modiphius using their 2D20 system. And I went through the many different options for how to start playing that game. And I sort of gave a little bit of a critique to their starter set, you might say, which I thought was a little bit underwhelming for the price. And when you've seen my videos on, the Pendragon starter set, the Call of Cthulhu starter set, the RuneQuest starter set, a lot of these have just a much better value proposition. And also the starter set for Star Trek did not include any free PDFs, which they did with all their other products. So it was also quite confusing as a consumer. All the other Star Trek stuff I got a free PDF, and suddenly I get a starter set, I get nothing. It was very weird. So it didn't feel like good value. So I recommended some other approaches than that, unless you were really, really new to RPGs. But now Modiphius has come out with this new game here, Dreams and Machines, which is an original IP from them. It's not a licensed game like a lot of their properties are. It's set in a really unique world, which we'll talk about as we get through the starter set contents itself. And I thought it was really promising sounding. Also, it's meant to be like a reasonable sort of entry point for people who are not that familiar with RPGs, but want to get into a little bit of an interesting kind of take on what they refer to as like an optimistic post-apocalyptic role-playing game, which I think is a pretty cool idea. The art, you can see, is fantastic, and I'm happy to say that the starter set is a huge step up from what they did with Star Trek. First of all, it looks amazing, right? And then secondly, look how thick this thing is. It's ginormous. It's absolutely huge. It costs £10 more than the Star Trek one. It's $29.99 in pounds, so I'm guessing that's about $40 or something in USD. I'm not sure. Maybe less, depending on where you can find it, but it certainly feels like a good value. If we flip it over, you can see we got a whole mess of good stuff in here. There's tons of cards. There's 4 books. There were 3 books? Maybe 3 books. There's a couple sheets of cardboard tokens for all the different things you need. And what they've done is they've done an interesting thing here where you make unique characters using cards, and then each player can store their character as a packet of cards in a little baggie, which they give you for each player, and then put it in an envelope and keep their character together that way rather than filling out a sheet. Now, the full game will have character sheets, and they've already opened up pre-orders for the full game, which I'll put a link to in the description. And I'm really looking forward to it, actually. I'm going to be running this game, hopefully, with my group really soon. I've tried to set up a system where we mainly play Call of Cthulhu because I love that game so much, but we're going to sprinkle it with some new stuff here and there, and whatever kind of really hits with people, we'll go and we'll do a campaign. So we're going to try the starter set for this and see how it hits with everybody, and if they like it, then we'll carry on. And the main thing that I criticized the Star Trek set for was not including enough dice to actually properly play the game, and that is addressed here. You get 5 D20 in this really nice hot pink sort of color, so that's great. So what's this actually about? Well, in Dreams and Machines, you're set on a planet called Avera Prime, which is a human colony very distant from Earth, and basically they had a horrible apocalyptic war with an AI that was called the Builder, and in order to survive this war, they basically had to bomb their own civilization back to the Stone Age to stop the Builder from achieving its goals. So what you have now is this gorgeous planet with tons of kind of open space and beautiful scenery and everything else, but human society is kind of starting over again, basically, on this planet. They've been cut off from Earth. They don't have any of the AI stuff anymore. There are bits and remnants of technology, including these giant mechs that are littering the landscape, some of which are still alive and might wake up and continue to wreak havoc if you stumble across one. We're not actually in the immediate post-apocalyptic scenario here. We're kind of a little bit distant from the actual apocalypse. And the idea is that we're in a hopeful phase. Things have been really, really bad. Many millions of people died on Avera Prime. Civilization was wiped to nothing, essentially. But now we've had a little bit of time to set up communities for people to start finding things to do again, to get civilization going again. Of course, people have different ideas about what that should look like and how it should work, but that will be part of the interesting role-playing element of the system, I think. So I really like this idea. In the full system, you won't have this. I don't believe you'll have this card system for making PCs, but it's an interesting way to make it easy for a new player with a starter set to create a varied set of characters from a pretty large set of possible cards. So I think that's an interesting approach. But from what I understand from the pre-orders that I've seen on the website, the full game will be done in a more traditional way. Like you have character archetypes and roles and stuff, and you build up some stats and put them on a sheet kind of thing. But with that out of the way, let's take a look at what's inside. So you can see, the box is amazingly thick. We're getting to Free League standards of quality here, which is fantastic to see. I love a big, thick box that I know will last for ages. And you can see it's filled right up to the top. Again, always a good sign. So we get a rules reference, which is only 24 pages long. So that's why I think, this is a good entry point for newer players to the hobby. Again, it's got very cool atmospheric artwork on the front. And we have a tutorial booklet. So as you noticed, or may have noticed on the back, there's a little logo on the top left that says play right out of the box. And so the idea is that you can basically start opening up this book, and it's got some quick reference stuff on the back as well. But you open up the tutorial book and everybody learns as they play, including the GM. They wanted to create a starter set where you basically open up the box, you build your characters from the cards, you learn the rules as you go, and you just jump right in. There's no prep involved for anybody. Then we have an adventure booklet. Yeah, so this is for continuing the characters after the tutorial booklet, I suppose. Yeah, and it also has some sort of advertising copy here for the player's guide, the game master's guide, and the game master's toolkit, which are of course now available for pre-order, as I mentioned. It looks like there's going to be a campaign guide as well, so it'll expand on the unfolding plot first discovered in the starter set and adds new creatures, ancient gear, player options, mysterious ruins, and dangerous wakers. Those are the mechs that occasionally wake up and cause havoc. So you get 3 nice booklets, very glossy paper, which we'll look through in a minute. Then we get these 2 lovely thick sheets of punchboard tokens. You can see it really thick, high quality. I don't know what these represent yet because this is really an unboxing. I've not looked at anything. I just opened the box to make sure everything was in here. We can see what looks like some bad guys over here, and there's some yellow tokens alongside them. We've got a lot of these blue bits, we've got a lot of these green bits and more over here, so I'm assuming there's going to be momentum, threat, and then there's spirit as well, I think, which characters can have. So I believe maybe the yellow would be like a momentum token, since there's a limited number, I'm not sure. And these here look like player characters and maybe a few NPCs as well, but these definitely are the 5 player characters seen around like various promotional art and stuff, but the quality of the tokens looks great. I like that each, the designs look unique at a glance. They're using different colors, different shapes as well, colorblind friendly, all that good stuff. So they really thought the design through on that one. Then we have this map here. Spoiler alert, this must be part of the adventure, I would assume. And I assume as well, like most 2D20 games, this is kind of a zone-based thing. So each area will be like a zone, and you'll be able to kind of work your way through this. It's more abstracted combat than something like D&D where you need, battle mat with squares, or champions where you need a hex grid, that kind of thing. It's much more like, are you in the same area? Are you in a distant area? That's all you really need to know. Then we have our little character envelopes, which is a really cool idea, like I said. So you've got, how many of these? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of these, looks like. Yeah, so I guess, in case you want to have a few different attempts. Player can write their personal name and their character name on here, and then inside, you'd be able to put your cards for your character. And also, they give you, these are some adventure handouts, so I'll try and keep those spoiler free for you. And then you have these little baggies here. So you can use these to store your cards nice and safe. Put them in the envelopes, and then, you can go keep them going between sessions, Like with a lot of other starter sets, if you've got a clever GM and they've got a good grasp on the game world, or if they've picked up the Game Master's Guide, you just carry on with these characters. Eventually you might transfer them over to a regular character sheet, but, there's no reason you couldn't keep developing the same character from the starter set and just go right on to further adventures, But I like the way that they've included this new sort of option. So rather than having a fully pre-generated character, you've got these cards that you build them up from. And there we go. We've got 5 lovely dice. So there's only D20s in the system. That doesn't use any of the challenge dice that you find in Star Trek or Oxum Cthulhu or some of the others. You can see the one here is marked by this symbol, which we also saw on one of the token types. So I'm assuming that might be spirit. It's got an interesting font as well for the numbers, which is quite nice. And there's a lovely shade of pink. It's not offensively pink, but there's a little bit of red in there to kind of soften it up a little bit. I'm actually really happy to have these D20s. I think they look and feel right for the game, and I'm just, thank goodness they put enough in the starter set, for the maximum number of D20s you can roll. That was my big complaint about the Star Trek set. Yeah, and then we have these cards. So these, I believe, are the ones for making your characters. And then over here, we have the first one that shows, it says mutated big centipede called Many Legs. He's got some attributes, he's got some combat, weapon abilities, and some special actions, and some notes. So he can move on any hard surface, requires no skill test to climb, all this kind of stuff. So I think there's going to be NPCs, enemies, friendly NPCs, and maybe even locations in here. I'm not sure, but we'll find out. But first, though, we'll roll back a little bit. Let's take a start with just flipping through the booklets real quick. So We'll start in the recommended order, which is to do the tutorial booklet first, and we'll see how it goes. So a long list of credits here. They have a short new to role-playing game section. I think, they've gotten shorter and shorter over the years because they figure most people who have gone far enough to buy this weird-ass game from, Modiphius probably knows it's something about tabletops, but you got to make sure you accommodate everybody. There's a brief intro to the world of dreams and machines, a world in the far future cut off from Earth, where inhabitants balance on a razor's edge between technological distrust and reverence. A world where sleeping mechs form part of the landscape, part of the culture even. And there's a nice little sort of introductory thing. It says, nothing to trouble you and your party. A world of adventures and exploration awaits those just arriving in New Moss Grove, which is the main location. A place where people are friendly, humble, and hopeful. A place soon to be torn apart. So you can use this introductory booklet to immediately start playing by creating the player's characters and learning the basic rules to our 2D20 system role-playing game. Follow these instructions bit by bit and you can begin playing right now. Got a lovely 2-pager spread of artwork here. Clearly there's some mechs causing some damage. And there's some descriptive text up here. Hundreds of years ago, the people of Vera Prime were cut off from our home, Earth. We fought a war against our corrupted AI, the Builder, and its army of mechs. We had to destroy our own civilization in the hope of survival. First, dreamers rebuilt, and the archivists around the towers that survived, and now we live simpler lives, scattered across the world, farming, fishing, and scavenging what we need from old world cities, careful of the wakers that might reactivate. Here we see an example of the kind of scrappy rebuilding that's happened around one of the towers that survived. I would guess they used to be part of, the old city's kind of infrastructure in some important way. Dreamers shun the advanced technologies that threaten humanity, but are adept in protecting their settlements using the forces of nature and their knowledge of physics. That's quite interesting. And they're clearly living a very different lifestyle, more rural, look like thatched roof cottages almost. And then we have the grabbers. They risk the danger of the old world ruins to recover desperately needed technology, trading it for supplies. All right. So we can see them kind of rappelling down into some mysterious something or other. There's some city wreckage in the background, and they're looking to grab up some useful stuff. The land is littered with long-dead machines that return to life as wakers continue their killing spree. Oh, here we have a quadruped one with a scary-looking laser cannon firing and some freaked-out-looking people trying to stand their ground. But yeah, it doesn't look great. It's pretty huge. Waterborne travelers called rivers keep communities connected with their boats, carrying people and trade up and down the rivers past more dangerous areas. You see, it's actually quite a lovely looking boat. Very pleasant. So it seems like each of the game's factions has found a niche for themselves in society. And then we get into the character creation system for the starter set. So in this starter set, you'll be playing a group of folks just setting off into the world in search of new wonders and your place in the world. Each of you will now create your original character using your character cards from the box. First, each player should select an origin card from Everin, Dreamer, Archivist, River, or Spear. The cards contain value information about each one of these character types, so take the time to read them before you select one. These origin cards tell you the character's attributes, tech level, spirit, supply points, and a special skill. Some origins begin with starting equipment, the Spear and Archivist in particular. Then we have some text about the attributes. A character's attributes represent their most basic abilities and are used to approach problems. Attributes have a rating from 6 to 16. Might represents a character's physical strength and endurance. Quickness represents a character's coordination and speed. Insight represents a character's understanding and how to apply knowledge. Resolve represents a character's ability to remain focused or to command attention. Spirit represents a character's drive, stamina, and luck. Spirit can push a character past their normal limits to achieve heroic feats and can also be used to resist consequences or avoid injury. Crucially, players can also spend spirit points to add dice to their rolls or to re-roll dice. Tech level describes the level of technology the character understands and can operate. Characters can't use equipment with a tech level above their own. This is a Spear. They hunt wakers. Cool. This is an Everin, the farmers and fishermen. Looks very jolly, doesn't he? So yeah, while we're doing this here, let's grab these, or at least what I think are the character cards, and have a quick look at what the origins look like. Give us some context here. So, as an example, we have the Everin card right up front, but I'll take off the wrapping, which hopefully won't be too arduous. You never know these things. Oh, looking good. Alright, now I'm not going to go through the details of every single card because there are many of them. So we have Origin, Everin, there's a couple of those. So they get Might 8, Quickness 8, Insight 10, Resolve 9, Tech Level 3, Spirit 6, Supply Points 1. And they get Glyph Pattern Clothing. Your clothing is covered in patterns that make machines overlook you when you move in a certain way. Once per scene, as an action, add +1 difficulty to a machine's attack against you. And then you can choose an archetype, and it says choose between Gather or Guardian. So presumably that's the next step. Then we have Dreamers. So they have Might 9, Quickness 8, Insight 8, Resolve 10, Tech level 2, lower than the Everin. So the Dreamers are the ones who don't like technology, remember. Higher Spirit, though, at 7 and 0 supply points. They have the ability Natural Resources. When you perform first aid, spend supply points equal to damage rating and patient's injury to count as having a first aid kit. When you create a trap or hindrance, spend 1 supply point to add +1 to the difficulty to avoid or remove that trap. Then they can choose between the archetype of Mediator or Gatherer. Then we have the Archivists. I guess they're trying to preserve some elements of the old world. So they have Glyph Lore. Gain 1 Stylus gear card and 1 Glyph card. Okay. And they have Might 8, Quickness 9, Insight 10, Resolve 8, Tech level 5, Spirit 4, and supply points 3. And they can choose archetypes of Tech or Mediator. And then finally, then we have the Spear with Might 10, Quickness 9, Insight 8, Resolve 8, Tech level 2, Spirit 5, supply points 1. So they have a Hunter Glyph. You mark your body and clothes to hide from machine sight. You may even attempt to hide from machine without cover or concealment. Has Electro Spear instead of any other weapons. And then archetype-wise, you can choose between Guardian or Grabber. And then we have the River. So they have a Might of 8, Quickness 10, Insight 9, Resolve 8, Tech level 4, which is the second highest so far, Spirit of 5, and supply points of 3, and they begin with 3 extra coin. Okay, that's cool. And then they can choose between Grabber or Tech as their archetype. Okay, so that's our origins, and so that must be... Yeah, step 2, choose your archetype. What your character's been doing with their life so far. Take the archetype cards, Mediator, Gatherer, Guardian, Grabber, and Tech, and select one from the 2 options on your origin card. Archetypes give each character their skills, supply points, and some more spirit. So the skills represent abilities picked up from your background. Each skill has a rating from 1 to 6. So your skills include Fight, Move, Operate, which is for operating, maintaining, and fixing tools and machines. Sneak is used to avoid notice, use camouflage, pick locks, or bypass security systems and traps. Study is used to gain information. Survive is used to determine how effectively a character can stay alive in the wilderness, navigate the natural world, and resist poisonous diseases. And talk is used for communication, or the ability to notice when you're being manipulated or deceived. So in this, we have an example of a river person. Okay, supply points. Every character in Dreams and Machines has a pool of supply points, which represent the tools and materials they carry. Players can spend supply points to introduce a piece of personal equipment into a scene that temporarily helps them in some way. And here we have an Archivist looking to use the old tech against the waking machines, and Dreamers who prefer to use the forces of nature. All right. So we'll look quickly through the archetypes here. So we have Gatherers. They get skills of Fight 1, Move 2, Operate 3, Sneak 2, Study 2, Survive 4, Talk 1. They get additional Spirit of 1 and 4 supply points. They start with a Hunting Pulsar, Heavy Protecting Clothing, and 2 coin. The Guardians, they get Fight 4, wow, Move 2, Operate 2, Sneak 3, Study 1, Survive 1, Talk 1, Spirit 1, supply points 2. And they start with a Security Pulsar and Light Armor and 5 coin. Mediator, they get Fight 1, Move 2, Operate 3, Sneak 1, Study 3, Survive 2, Talk 3, so they're good talkers, hence the name. Spirit points, they get 2 more and 3 supply points, and they start with a crossbow and a med kit and 5 coin. Not too bad. Then we have the Tech, so Fight 1, Move 2, Operate 4, Sneak 2, Study 3, Survive 1, Talk 2, no new Spirit, but 6 supply points, okay. And they start with a Bypass kit and a Hunting Pulsar, so I'm guessing a Bypass kit will be like this kind of lock-breaking thing. It has 2 starting coins. And then we have the Grabber, so they have Fight 2, Move 2, Operate 3, Sneak 4, Study 1, Survive 1, Talk 2, Spirit 1, and 4 supply points. And they start with a Spark Thrower and Protective Clothing and 2 starting coin. So now, let's see, choose your talents. So there are 4 possible talents for each archetype to choose from. Each of you should pick one. Talents are mechanical bonuses, rerolls, rules, exceptions, or extra abilities characters can use by spending Spirit. Are they also in the card deck? I would assume so. Oh yeah, talents. Okay. The temperaments came first, for some reason, which is the next step. So talents, we have stuff like Make, Do, and Mend. At the end of a scene, if you created any temporary items using supply points, you recover half, rounded up, the supply points spent to make those items. Risky resources, when you succeed at a skill test to find or claim something valuable or useful, you may add 2 to threat, or to either gain 2 supply points or some other additional treasure of the GM's choice. Supply and demand, when you attempt a skill test to trade resources or valuables, you may reroll 1 die for free without spending Spirit. You can see on the bottom, each talent links to a specific archetype as well. So for Grabber, you could have a Bag of Tricks. You may spend 1 supply point to create a trick to distract or disrupt an enemy before or after you take your action. You may provide yourself with concealment, such as smoke, add +1 to the difficulty of the next test one nearby NPC makes, or prevent one nearby NPC from moving from their zone in their next turn. So those are all Grabber talents. About Guardians, Decisive Strike. When you succeed at an attack, you may spend 1 Spirit to increase the damage rating of the attack by +2. Or you can take a defensive position, add 1 to threat to reduce the damage rating of the attack's injury by 2 to a minimum of 1. Mediators, what do we got? Bedside manner. When you succeeded a skill test to perform first aid on an ally, and you bought one or more extra dice for that test, the ally regained spirit equal to the number of extra dice you bought. Oh, that's useful. They also have guidance. When an ally attempts a skill test, you can spend one spirit to advise and guide that character, rolling 1d20 against your own insight talk as per the assistance rules. And then text. When you attempt to test or defend in a contest to avoid an action or effect caused by a machine, you may spend 2 spirit to count one of your dice as if it had rolled a 1. Oh, that's handy. 1s in this game, like any 2d20, will count as 2 successes, I'm sure. Further, reduce the damage rating of any injuries caused by machine attacks by 1. Wow, that's very good. Also for text, Mech Breaker. When you create a truth that represents a weakness or flaw you've spotted or learned about in a machine, and you or an ally make an attack against that machine, the damage rating of that attack's injury is increased by +2. Cool. Yeah, so that's our talents. I just picked a few, not reading all of them. So after you pick one of each of the 4 possible talents for your archetype, then you choose your temperament. So, and by the way, lovely illustrations again. So this is what a guardian looks like. We have a mediator here who's trying to catch people's attention. Hey, wait a minute, listen to me. We got a tech guy. We got a grabber, always looking out for old tech stuff. Kind of funny astronaut suit they're wearing. So temperament. Every character is a unique person that has an interesting temperament. Circumspect, conspicuous, demonstrative, fixed, manipulative, and maverick. Each player should select one temperament, or the GM may choose to hand them out at random. These provide some suggestions for how the character behaves and tells you what happens to this character if they run out of spirit and become exhausted. In addition, your temperament details an additional way for the character to regain spirit as a result of great role playing. Okay, so we've got 6 possible temperaments. Circumspect. When there's any momentum in the group pool at the start of your turn, regain 1 spirit. And when your spirit reaches 0, you automatically fail on all resolve tests and add +1 difficulty to all of the tests. And when you're exhausted, you are despairing. If you are conspicuous, you're quick to anger, quick to laughter, and grab existence with both hands. When you're the first PC to take a turn in a round, regain 1 spirit. When your spirit reaches 0, you automatically fail on all might tests and add +1 difficulty to all of the tests. And if you are exhausted, you become weary. Demonstrative. When you excel, you want everyone to know it. When you succeed at a skill test of difficulty 3 or higher, regain 1 spirit. When your spirit reaches 0, you automatically fail on all insight tests and add +1 difficulty to all of the tests. And if you're exhausted, you become confused. If you've got a fixed temperament, when you decide on something, nothing changes your mind. Each time you save 1 or more momentum into the group pool, regain 1 spirit. When your spirit reaches 0, you automatically fail on all resolve tests and add +1 difficulty to all of the tests. And when you're exhausted, you are despairing. Manipulative. You plot and scheme, creating cunning plans to ensure your success. When you create a truth that represents a plan or scheme, regain 1 spirit. When they're exhausted, they become confused. And then we have the Maverick. You're daring but undisciplined and unpredictable, handling things your way. When the GM spends 3 or more threat at once, regain 1 spirit. Then when they are exhausted, they are breathless. All right. And then we're back to circumspect. So that's all of our temperaments. So there's a lot of different characters you can build here because you've got your different origins. Then you can pick from your different archetypes. Then you can pick one out of each of the 4 talents for that archetype. Then you can pick a temperament as well, and they'll all be different. So you could play the same adventure a million different ways using these cards. So it's quite clever, I think. Finishing touches. All right. So lastly, count the total spirit and supplies from your origin and archetype cards, and take that many spirit and supply point tokens. Okay. So these are in fact spirit tokens, and that is what is represented as the 1 on the D20 as well, this shape. And these green guys are supply tokens. Okay. So that helps. Oh, and they have denominations as well, which is useful. So then think of a name for your character, select one of the envelopes to keep all of your cards and handouts in, and write your name in the envelope. Additionally, you may want to take a moment to think about your characters' relationships to each other and how they came to travel together. And now you're ready to play. Set aside any remaining cards and turn to the tutorial scene, Destruction. This booklet contains tutorial RPG adventures centered around an attack farmstead. As survivors follow the culprit's trail, it leads into adventure focused on New Moss Grove and his people. As the GM, you should read through at least the first part of this booklet and the first few scenes to prepare yourself for running your next session of Dreams and Machines. Often the players won't do what you anticipate, so reading ahead will help you to make choices when they take an unexpected turn. Remember that these pages contain GM-only information, and only material in read-aloud formatting should be read to the player. Look at the cute mushroom. I like that. So we'll just quickly flip through this so you can see what the tutorial adventure looks like, but we're not going to really stop and pay close attention here. So you will have a chance to pick up equipment, looks like. You're going to meet some nasty dudes, more equipment. There's going to be guidance about spending spirit, getting exhausted, and then there's all these read aloud things. I have a handy little speaker icon to let you know how to do looting, scavenging, and supply points. Then we have in a second tutorial scene, the use of momentum, which is the group pool that we're used to from the 2D20 system. Works a bit differently in this game, though, because you don't use momentum for dice. You use your own spirit pool for dice. And then we have threat, which the GM can gain. So the game master can spend threat for certain reasons and can gain threat due to actions of NPCs and due to things that player characters do that cost threat. And this is very threatening. I like that. Yeah, and so then there's some investigation to do. Then there's some info about supply points, summary of information you've learned, and then setting up camp. being attacked by something, so taking damage and injury, and then a conclusion. When you're ready, grab the adventure booklet and begin reading. After the tutorial, you make a final decision about something and then move on to the rest of the adventure, which is in the adventure booklet. Then you should read up on the rules from the rules reference booklet to clarify anything you were confused about or didn't cover, and have your players read the section called What Can I Do?, which sums up how they will approach the upcoming scenes as players. There we go. And then here we have that, the What Can I Do section for guidance for players. So what they can do to rest, supplies and scavenging, getting supply points, all that kind of good stuff. And then we have a lovely little ransom note style reference sheet on the back here. Test difficulties ranging from 0 to 5, how tests work, types of exhaustion, types of truths you can create about scenes, adjudicating truths, what you gain from resting, by eating, and then the complication range. So a lot of this is standard 2d20 stuff, but there's unique wrinkles as well, as you can see. So that's the tutorial booklet, which is nice and chunky and very clear, easy to understand. Before we move on, I'll just quickly show off some of the equipment cards. So there's really a ton of cool stuff you can find in these adventures. Crossbows, spears. Some character types get granted at the beginning, like hunting pulsars and the electro spears. Light armor, stuff like that. And then there's some glyphs, and then we have some NPCs. We have some named ones. We got a thrall, which is probably a bad guy, I'm assuming. And then we have some archivist healers, homesteaders, traders, a mutated cat, a grabber twins, some civilians, and a dark city agent. You know, I think a lot of thought went into the construction of the starter set, how to make sure it had loads of play variety, that players felt that they had some agency in designing a character, but that it wasn't a huge chore to do so. And I think that what they've done with it is really clever, actually. I'm using this card system. That's very cool. All right, so we'll move on to the rules reference just quickly. So there you can see it's only 24 pages long. So as with other 2d20 games, you divide things into scenes. So action scenes or conflict scenes are described first, and there's an optional rule for dividing the action into rounds and turns, more like a conventional game. And then you can interrupt the action order by spending 2 momentum. NPCs can spend 2 from threat instead if they want to. It tells you about how armor works, and then how you can assist characters and use teamwork, which is always very valuable, of course. Then how to deal with attacks, which typically use might and fight or quickness and fight at the GM's discretion. Range attacks or quickness fight tests. If the opponent is aware of the attack, then the attack becomes a contest with the defender rolling quickness move. So that gives you an incentive to get the jump on somebody. If they don't know you're there, because you're nice and stealthy, then they can't oppose your roll, which could be quite helpful for you. There's always risk of a counter attack. If you're defending against an attack and win the contest, you may spend 2 momentum to counter attack. If you counter attack, then you inflict an injury as if you'd made a successful attack without rolling. Wow, that's cool. About attributes, what they mean in real world terms. So 6 to 7 is weak, 8 to 10 is average, 11 to 12 is natural talent or regular training, 13 to 14 is a mixture of talent, training, and dedication, 15 to 16 is the best of the best. A little more description of each of the 4 main attributes as well. And then how you can avoid danger, complications that can happen when you're making a test. The 2 most common ways that complication will manifest will be truth and threat. So inflicting a truth is when you create something new, some new narrative aspect to the scene, basically, that causes trouble for the player. Either they can't do something as well as they could before, or they can't take certain actions at all. Alternatively, the complication can be bought off by adding 2 points to the threat pool. And then they talk about the complication range. So some circumstances can make a test uncertain, though not necessarily more difficult. So in those cases, you would increase the complication range from 1 to 5. So you get a complication on 20, a complication range 1. And if your complication range is 5, then it's from between 16 to 20. So that way you can make tests a bit more uncertain without necessarily being more difficult. It's a nice little mechanic I always liked in 2d20. Then there's also success at a cost. Some tests can't really be fail, but there's uncertainty as to whether you complete the test without problems. In such a situation, the game master may allow characters to succeed at a cost. If the failed test still results in a successful outcome, but the character also suffers 1 automatic complication in addition to any that occur because of the dice, and they function exactly the same as those generated by the dice. Though the test has produced a successful outcome, momentum cannot be spent to improve the outcome of a test that has succeeded at cost. Okay. Then we got confront problem. So this is a catch-all for overcoming obstacles, embarking upon risky endeavors, or otherwise doing something that isn't directly covered by the other actions listed here. Then we talk about contests, which are basically opposed rolls. So the reactive character, often called the defender, rolls first, but they don't have a set difficulty. Instead, however many successes they score becomes the difficulty for the active character or the attackers. So they try to beat the difficulty set for them. If they succeed, then they achieve what they were trying to do, and any excess successes become momentum as normal. If they fail, then the reactive character receives 1 momentum for each success less than the difficulty the active character scored. And then they have some factors that could affect the difficulty of a test. Then they talk about the general usage of dice. So using 20-sided dice only. It's helpful to have at least 2 d20s for each player, and more is better as players may be rolling as many as 5 at a time. See? See, that's what I said about the Star Trek set. Many circumstances allow a character to re-roll one or more dice, and you can choose which dice you want to re-roll, and the new result replaces the original ones even if the new result is worse. Some situations allow for a specific number of dice to be re-rolled, while others allow all the dice in a pool to be re-rolled. Players may always choose how many dice they wish to re-roll up to the number listed. Okay, so you're not forced to re-roll your entire pool. Even if you can you can always set aside a couple of those. Character death. So, characters in Dreams of Machines are typically plucky and determined enough to avoid death by the skin of their teeth most of the time. Outright dying is rare, however it does happen. A defeated character dies immediately if they suffer an additional injury. Executing down foes like this should be extremely rare. If one of the PCs attempt this, add 2 to threat, and enemy NPCs must spend 2 threat to carry out an execution. If a character suffers an injury, they are defeated and they can't take any further actions during the current scene. They may be unconscious, they might be dazed and confused, but the important part is they can't do anything else in the scene. They can be brought back into the fight by another character, typically making a test with a difficulty of 2, normally a resolve, talk, or resolve, survive test. This removes the defeated state and allows the character to take actions again, although it doesn't remove any injuries they've suffered, restore any spirit, or stop them from being exhausted as applicable. Normal NPCs are defeated after a single injury, just like player characters, but major NPCs are tougher and are not defeated until they've suffered 2, 3, or more injuries as noted in their profile. So keep that in mind. So then we get into truths, which are also mentioned using different wordings and other iterations of 2d20, but basically, so you change some fact about the current situation. Materials changes could be like the lights being extinguished or something being set on fire, and this will be typically a skill test with a difficulty of 2. Success means the truth is created, removed, or changed as desired. Failure means that the desired change wasn't made, though the GM may allow this to succeed at a cost. Then we have supply points. So they collectively represent the assorted tools, pieces of junk and scrap, and makeshift equipment that you carry. These items tend to come in handy during a character's adventures. They can gain more supply points than they start with, but they will reset to the starting amount at the beginning of each adventure. Characters are assumed to barter, trade, and use their supply points between adventures too. When a character attempts an action, you may declare that you have a gadget that might help. You then reveal the tool or device which you are revealing, and the GM determines how many supply points the device will cost. If you have enough supply points, then you gain that device as an equipment truth. It may have additional benefits depending on what you described, and can attempt to resolve the action using that device. You cannot spend more points on a single device than your tech level. And then they have the descriptions, so supply costs can go up to 5, and that would be things like power tools with integrated sensors or limited automation, or devices requiring high capacity power supplies. And on the other end, 1 would be simple tools with no moving parts or only 1 moving part, no more than 2 components. Interesting. Well, that's pretty cool. So, you have this kind of flexible ability to make equipment. Okay, so then the definition of a game master, we know what that is. Using glyphs, graphic layer instruction format. So this is a useful tool for defending against hostile machines. Requires a quickness study test with difficulty equal to the complexity of the glyph. Using a stylus can be done rapidly, and the glyph can be applied to any surface. Other ways of describing the glyph, paint, chalk, etc. take longer, cannot apply to all surfaces, may wash or rub off, and may be less precise than a stylus. The glyph descriptions below refer to the marked object, the marked person, or the marked location, to know the object, person, or location upon which the glyph is inscribed. The machine, upon seeing the glyph, will attempt to obey the glyph's instructions to the best of its ability. If any hostile action is made, the machine will ignore all glyphs in the current scene. Otherwise, a machine may spend threat equal to the complexity of the glyph to ignore it. Once a machine has paid to ignore a glyph, it will ignore any glyphs of that complexity or less for the remainder of the scene. In narrative terms, the screaming madness corrupting the machine can drive it to override glyph commands. Once a machine has been affected by a glyph once, it cannot be affected again in the current scene. Okay, so glyphs are ways that you can cause machines to do stuff that they don't necessarily want to do, and the only way they can get past it is by spending a whole load of threat equal to the complexity of that glyph. That's pretty interesting. Injuries, so these are the damages caused to characters by attacks and hazards. Injury comes in 2 parts, the kind of injury it inflicts, which is a truth on the target, and a damage rating, which is a number from 1 to 6. The damage rating is how much spirit the target may spend to avoid the injury. The attacker may spend momentum to increase the injury's damage rating on a 1-for-1 basis. Okay, so you want to spend spirit to avoid injury. Spend a number of points of spirit equal to the damage rating of the attack after any increases from the attacker spending momentum. If you're wearing armor or protective clothing, then reduce the amount of spirit you need to spend by an amount equal to the protection rating of the armor. Aha, so that's how armor works. A character who has suffered 1 or more injuries will require healing. While spirit can be recovered through a reassurance and rest, an injury may require more effort to heal. Okay, so performing first aid to treat an injury requires an insight survive test with a difficulty equal to the base cost of the injury. Success heals that specific injury plus 1 extra injury of that cost or lower for each momentum spent by the performing character. Alternatively, you can sacrifice your armor to avoid injury. You are defeated but suffer no injury and the armor you're wearing is destroyed. If the character has a first aid kit, the difficulty of a skill test first aid is reduced to 1, but a first aid kit can only be used a limited number of times. Then we have the momentum pool, which we know from other 2d20 games. Common uses for momentum, second wind, creating a truth. So second wind restores up to 3 spirit, and you can Restoring up to 3 spirit costs 6 momentum, which would be the whole pool. Create truth will cost 2 momentum. Ask a question of the GM. That's 1 momentum and is repeatable. You can increase the damage of an attack per momentum spent. You can reduce time. 2 momentum will have the amount of time an action would take to complete. After succeeding at a test, you may spend 2 momentum to immediately attempt another action before any other character can attempt to respond. That's a follow-up. Or you can revive. Spend 2 momentum to help an ally who is exhausted. The character regains 1 spirit and is no longer exhausted. And yeah, the group pool cannot contain more than 6 momentum at any time, so be aware of that. At the end of each scene, 1 point of momentum from the group pool is lost. Momentum must be maintained because it will not last forever. NPCs. So we have normal NPCs. They have a single truth and 2 attributes. They also have 1 skill rating, which is always used with their main attribute, and 1 used with their default attribute. They're defeated after suffering a single injury. Group of some minor NPCs. They can take group actions. So when a group of NPCs is sent to test, one of the NPCs in the group leads the action and the rest assist the leader. When a group of NPCs is attacked, a single NPC in the group is hit by the attack, and the attacker may spend momentum to hit extra NPCs in that group. Every 2 momentum spent hits 1 extra NPC. If the weapon has the burst quality, it hits 1 extra NPC for every 1 momentum spent instead. Okay. Attacks against groups are always normal skill tests rather than contests. If the group is able to defend itself, difficulty of the attack increases by +1 for every 2 NPCs in the group. NPCs who receive this bonus may spend 2 points of threat to counterattack if an attack against them misses. Then we have major NPCs, so these are dedicated and resourceful characters or especially dangerous machines, offering with extra training or useful abilities. They will have 1 or more truths, one of which is a basic description of the NPC's job or role. Other truths may reflect their reputation or some other useful detail. They will have the 4 attributes that PCs have and the same skills, and they will have a pool of personal threat they may spend, and only them, and they're defeated after suffering a number of injuries equal to the number of truths it has +1. And they have a selection of distinct actions they can take, which are displayed on a separate set of cards. Cool. All right, then we have definitions for PC characters, powered items, they need some kind of powered supply, skills, and skill rating from 1 to 6, and what that means in the real world from little or no knowledge at 1 to extensive training, considerable expertise, and masterful knowledge at 6. Each of them, I think they're pretty self-explanatory as far as what they mean. Then we have the special resource of spirit, which we've seen referred to a number of times. Each player character has a natural spirit pool, which is determined during character creation, can increase in time as the character grows. It determines how many points of spirit each player character begins with at the start of each adventure. Okay, and then we talk about using them to add a die to your test, which costs 1 spirit, re-roll a die, which costs 1 spirit for a single d20, or you can avoid injury, but you need enough spirit to equal the damage of the injury minus your armor. And then when your spirit is reduced to 0, you become exhausted. And there's different forms of that: breathless, confused, and despairing, each of which shuts down one of the 4 attributes. Depending on your character's temperament, you may have a default form of exhaustion. Choosing a form of exhaustion other than this is possible, but adds 1 to threat. And you can recover spirit through the second wind action, which uses momentum, or the adrenaline rush by adding to threat. Of course, rest can help you regain spirit by taking a breather. Each character regains 2 spirit during a breather. A break is a more significant rest, taking at least half an hour, but no more than 90 minutes. Then you gain 4 spirit. And if you take an extended rest in bed for several hours, then you get 6 spirit. You may choose to sacrifice up to half the spirit you would gain to spend some time and effort helping someone else. Each point of spirit you give up allows the character you help to gain 1 extra spirit. Oh, that's lovely. So if somebody's really screwed up from a fight, you can sacrifice some of your own spirit regain to help them gain more. Definitions of talent, and then the tech level, which is a kind of upper limit on what items you can interact with, a full summary of how tests work, which is handy, and the difficulty ranges from 0 to 5, from simple to daunting, and then some examples for each of those, which is helpful, and then an explanation, as we've seen many times with these games, difficulty 0 tests. The use of the threat pool by GMs, how player characters interact with it, how the GM can interact with it using NPCs, creating threatening circumstances, bringing reinforcements, so minor NPCs were for 1 threat each, major NPCs cost 2. Then we have more stuff about truths, so there are location truths that represent a detail about the scene that you're in. A situation truth describes something happening in the scene, so weather, darkness, or whatever. Personal truth describes the nature or state of a character or creature. Equipment truths describe a single item, object, or tool, so those are what we get by using supply points. Then weapons, so each weapon will have a name, tech level, weapon type, damage, some qualities, including bursts, long range, loud, breaker, which means it's really good at damaging machines, quiet, so it's more subtle to use, or it's powered, which means you need some juice to power the weapon. So then we have zones, which we'll again be familiar with from other 2d20s, and then we have the various components list. So we've got all the different cards. There's more than 150 in total, I think. I've got 31 threat tokens, wow, for the GM, 7 momentum tokens, 34 spirit tokens, 48 supply tokens. And these I didn't know. Okay, knowledge fragment tokens. They must be for the adventure. We've got 6 player tokens, 7 NPC tokens, 5 20-sided die, 1 map, 7 envelopes, and 13 handouts. Very cool. All right, and then lastly, we have the adventure booklet. So again, to avoid spoilage, we'll just kind of flip through this relatively quickly. So we have an introduction synopsis, and it's quite a bit longer than the previous tutorial adventure. This is set in New Moss Grove, and we have 10 scenes and a full 61 pages. So that's quite a lot of content, actually. We can see there's lots of cute little drawings and notes everywhere. So there's some location cards as predicted, some equipment cards, handouts, and it's really kind of helping out the GM, making it really clear what you need to do for each scene, setting out more details of the setting as well, the different game mechanics, as well as, different things you can encounter in the world. So nanograms, details of the factions, some details about the Grabber twins, who we saw their cards earlier. Yeah, I think it looks really nice. I think the layout is great. And yes, as a way of thinking about role-playing, bit of improv there. Many legs, swarm creatures, and their tactics. Lots of read-aloud text. And again, for each scene, what you need to get ready as the GM for that scene. So, this is really well done. I feel like, even as a new GM, you'd be pretty confident reading through this that, okay, I need these sets of tokens, these cards, these locations, and, you read a couple of scenes ahead and you'll be ready to go, basically. And because the 2D20 system is so narrative focused, you don't have to worry about, balancing encounters and, dealing with, battle mats and all that kind of nonsense. It's just sort of, you roll the die, you test the skills. It's a universal resolution mechanic. Your characters will be thinking strategically about spirit, about recovery, and I think it's a great introduction to GMing here. I'm quite impressed with the way they've approached this. But yeah, so to avoid spoilies, I'll skip to the end. Happy dreaming! And now, here we have the text again at the end telling you, buy more stuff, please. Which is fair enough. I think, the quality of this is really excellent, I have to say. All right, so before we go, let's just take a quick look at the other set of cards. Now, I'm assuming these will be location cards, NPCs, maybe some more equipment that's in the adventure book after the tutorial book. I feel like the NPCs that we saw in the first set of cards were just coming from the tutorial book, but I might be wrong. And this deck is just as thick as the other one, if not even more so. So who we got? We've got many-legged centipedes. We've got some archivist traders, decrepit walkers. Okay, so these are cumbersome machines. Major NPCs. Wow. Technomancers, security warden, malfunctioning nanogram. I love the use of these kind of handwritten fonts. It looks fantastic. Compact hovering machine, more decrepit walkers. There's quite a few of them, but they have different actions. Plasma blast, crush, missile salvo, defend, self-repair. Okay, so these are like the talents that these major NPCs and threats have. Okay, I get it. Security wardens can do a bunch of different things. Ambush, deterrent pulse, repulsor shove, nanograms, emergency reboot. That's cool. Shock staff, that sounds bad. Patrolling. Okay, those are the security wardens. Repair mechs have lashing tendrils and improvised guns, repair protocols. Oh, and then we've got some player reference cards. So for momentum spends, so we've got 6 of those, looks like. And then we have, okay, these are the location cards. So on the front we have details, and possible actions for each. So I'm not going to spoil all that, but we will look at the beautiful artwork because it is very beautiful. Hopefully you can see it without too much glare. I think the artwork for this game is really atmospheric, really lovely. It does have this kind of gritty, dusty, post-apocalyptic vibe, and yet it's also quite clean sci-fi style. There's a little bit of interesting kind of spiritual elements here. I don't know. The beasts look suitably scary, these wakers rather. I love the sort of vibrant nature of these communities that have been springing up. I mean, it's definitely got a unique vibe, this setting, and I have to say I'm quite intrigued to give it a try. And as a starter set, using this card system, including the location cards as well, is very, very clever. It helps the GM to get everything set up that they need to run the NPCs in each scene, to understand the nature of each scene and the location they're in. I think it's great. We got, fire burning here. Looks like something out of Dune right here, off in the desert. It looks like an electro spear. Oh, is that the Terminator falling into the pit? Yep. So very, very cool stuff. I have to say, this is such a huge step above what we got in the Star Trek starter set. So I gotta give a round of applause to Modiphius on this one. I think they've done an excellent job here. I like this card system. I think it's annoying to do that digitally, which is my only problem with it. And that's how most of my games run because I'm too sick to live in the the plague lands where these days everybody is spreading many mutated forms of COVID with each other, and any one of them could be my last, so I have to play online, unfortunately. But nevertheless, there are pre-gens available from the Quick Start as well, but I'll try and find a way to use the digital cards to help people design their own characters. But yeah, I think this is a fantastic starter set. The setting of Avira Prime, I think, is really compelling. Everything looks beautiful. The box is beautiful. The cards look great and have a really nice look about them. I like having the right amount of dice for once. And the cost was right as well. I think 30 quid is very reasonable. It definitely feels right for what you get. And it's actually cheaper than the equivalent from Free League nowadays, who are now having to pay VAT on starter sets. So all their prices have gone up recently. So everything's going to be closer to £40 for them. Whereas Modiphius is UK based, so we don't have that problem. So another Brexit issue rears its ugly head in the tabletop RPG community. But yeah, if you're interested at all in the setting, definitely pick this up. I think this is really well done. It's going to give you a really clear concept of whether the system is for you or not. And that's really what I bought this for. I saw what they were including in this, and it looked really nice on another video that I saw from Modiphius, and I thought, you know what, screw it. Let's take a dive in. We'll see how I feel about it, because I was hemming and hawing about whether to pre-order the GM kit, the GM guide, and the player's guide, because I like the idea of the setting. But so we're gonna play this in my group, and we'll see how it goes, and that'll be the decider. And I think people are gonna like it. It's a really nice intro to 2D20, really easy to understand. I've got a brand new role player in my group as well, who will be happy to have these nice straightforward mechanics to pick up, and that having that narrative aspect to 2D20 will shake things up a little bit, because until now we've been doing basically trad RPGs, as they're called, where the GM, I'm there telling them the facts of what's happening. You roll the die, and the thing happens or it doesn't happen. You're not changing the narrative with adding truths or creating equipment from nothing like you can in these sorts of games. So I'm babbling now, but I'm just very excited, and I want to give kudos to Modiphius for, with their first brand new IP in a while or maybe their first one ever, I'm not sure. But at any rate, they came out with a smasher of a starter set. I think it's a great piece of work, and I highly recommend it if you're interested in the setting. And personally, I might end up buying the books, even if my friends don't like the game, because I think it looks really cool, and I'm a sucker for stuff like this. And the idea of this kind of optimistic post-apocalypse, I think, is really, really nice and unique. It kind of fits the vibe I'm trying to create in real life, where I feel like our world is declining, things are getting worse every year, but I still have this bit of me inside that thinks, we can do better, we can get past this. And that's a feeling you get from Star Trek, which is why I love it. It's a feeling I get from this game as well. So I'm really happy to see how good the starter set is, and that the vibe I get from the game is really hitting me in the right spot. So anyway, with that being enough rambling from me, I hope that was useful to some of you out there. If you got any questions about the starter set, let me know. I don't know when we'll be able to run it. Hopefully I can find a mutually agreeable time with the group soon enough, and we'll let you know, or I'll let you know at some future point how it went. If you played it, if you had any hot tips, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you guys. And in general, just, if you like the video, please do share it and send it on and pass the word around. I'm always happy to get more subscribers in our community. I'm never going to be doing this for money. I do this because I love the games. It's a very expensive hobby because I own a lot of these games. But, I just do this because I love talking about games and, experiencing different game systems and mechanics. So the more people I can share that with, the more fun I'll have. That's what it's about for me. So if you want to share and help encourage people to subscribe, that'd be great. In the meantime, take care of yourselves as always. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. All right, take care, and bye-bye.